Right now, as you are watching this, there are millions of Americans who worked hard for 30, 40, sometimes 50 years of their lives, and every single month they are receiving a Social Security check that is smaller than it should be. We are not talking about a few extra dollars, we are talking about hundreds of dollars per month that some retirees are simply leaving uncollected, not because the money is not there, not because they did not earn it, but because nobody ever told them to look. If you were born before 1955, the next few minutes could put real money back in your pocket, and I genuinely mean that. So stay with me because this is one video you do not want to walk away from early. Welcome to Retire Mentor, the channel where we break down everything retirement so that you can make smarter, more confident decisions about your financial future. If you are new here, I want to ask you something simple. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Every week, we publish videos exactly like this one, videos that are designed to protect your retirement, maximize your income, and make sure nobody leaves money on the table that they rightfully earned. Now, let us talk about what is really going on with Social Security and why so many people born before 1955 may be getting shortchanged without ever knowing it. I want to start with a real story because I think it will hit home for a lot of you. There is a man I'm going to call John. John worked as a machinist in Ohio for 38 years. He retired at 62, started collecting Social Security, and thought everything was fine. His check came every month, he paid his bills, and life went on. It was not until his neighbor mentioned something at a backyard cookout that John started asking questions. His neighbor had gone online to check his earnings history on the Social Security Administration website and had found 3 full years of wages that were never recorded. 3 years of income that the government simply did not have on file. When those wages were added back and his benefit was recalculated, John was owed back payments and a higher monthly check going forward. John had been leaving money behind for years without any idea it was happening. Now here is where it gets really interesting. John is not an unusual case. Errors in Social Security earnings records are more common than most people realize. The Social Security Administration itself has acknowledged over the years that wage data can be missing or miscoded, especially for people who worked during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when paper records were the norm and data entry mistakes happened regularly. If you were born before 1955, the majority of your working years fell squarely in that era. That means the risk that your earnings history contains an error is very real, and it is something worth checking. Here is what I want you to do, and this is completely free and takes about 10 minutes. Go to ssa.gov and create or log into your My Social Security account. Once you are in, you can pull up your complete earnings record year by year. What you are looking for is any year where the reported earnings look too low or show zero when you know you were working and paying taxes. Cross-reference that with your old tax returns, W-2 forms, or pay stubs if you have them. If you find a discrepancy, you can file a request to correct your record. The SSA calls this an earnings correction request, and it can result in a recalculated benefit and, in some cases, retroactive payments. But this next one caught me completely off guard when I first started researching it, and I think it is going to surprise you too. A lot of people born before 1955 were still in the workforce during a period when Social Security law was changing significantly, and some of those changes created benefit opportunities that millions of people simply did not know to claim. Let me introduce you to Linda. Linda is 69 years old, recently widowed, and has been collecting Social Security since she turned 66. Linda always thought of her benefit as hers alone, based on her own work history. What Linda did not know is that as a surviving spouse, she was potentially entitled to her late husband's benefit if it was larger than her own. That is called a survivor benefit, and it is one of the most commonly overlooked sources of retirement income in the entire system. When Linda finally spoke with a Social Security specialist and had her situation reviewed, she discovered her late husband had earned significantly more over his career than she had. By switching to his survivor benefit, her monthly check increased by over $300. That adds up to more than $3,600 per year, and Linda had been leaving that money behind for over 2 years before anyone told her. Survivor benefits are not automatic in every situation. You need to apply for them. And here is the rule that matters in 2026. If you are a surviving spouse, you can claim survivor benefits as early as age 60 or age 50 if you are disabled. You can also strategically claim your own retirement benefit first, let the survivor benefit grow, and then switch later, or do it the other way around depending on which strategy produces the higher lifetime income. The math on this is different for every person, which is exactly why speaking with someone at the SSA or a qualified financial advisor is so important. But the core point is this: if you were married and your spouse is no longer living, please do not assume you are automatically receiving the highest benefit you are entitled to. Check it. Now pay close attention here because this one is a big deal, and I see it trip people up all the time. I am talking about spousal benefits, and they are completely separate from survivor benefits. Spousal benefits are for people whose spouse is still alive, but whose own work record produces a lower Social Security benefit than 50% of their spouse's benefit. Here's how it works in 2026. If your spouse's full retirement age benefit is $2,400 per month and your own benefit based on your work history would only be $900 per month, you may be entitled to claim up to 50% of your spouse's benefit instead, which in this case would be $1,200 per month. That is a difference of $300 every single month, and many couples simply do not know this rule exists. And here is the part that nobody talks about. Spousal benefits do not require you to have worked a single day in your life. A spouse who stayed home to raise children, who cared for aging parents, or who supported the family in non-traditional ways is still entitled to up to 50% of their working spouse's benefit at full retirement age. That is a recognition built into Social Security law that unpaid contributions to a household and a family have real value. I want to bring back our friend Bob here because Bob's situation is a perfect example of the spousal benefit in action. Bob is 72 and his wife Carol spent most of their marriage raising their 4 kids and working part-time jobs that did not add up to a large earnings record. When Carol turned 66, she assumed her Social Security check would be small, so she just started taking whatever the system offered her without asking any questions. Bob happened to mention her situation to a coworker who was a retired HR director, and that coworker immediately flagged the issue. Carol was not claiming the spousal benefit she was entitled to based on Bob's record. When they went back to the SSA and sorted it out, her monthly benefit nearly doubled. She also may have been eligible for back pay depending on when she first applied and how the claim was handled, and that is a conversation worth having with the SSA directly. This next point is where I see people leave serious money on the table, and it applies specifically to those of you who may have delayed your claim or are still deciding when to start. We are talking about delayed retirement credits. Here is the rule in 2026 that you need to know. For every month past your full retirement age that you delay claiming Social Security, your benefit grows by roughly 2/3 of 1%. That works out to 8% per year. If your full retirement age benefit would have been $2,000 per month and you waited until 70 to claim instead of 67, your benefit would grow to approximately $2,480 per month. That is nearly $500 more every single month for the rest of your life. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking that you needed the money when you retired and you did not have the luxury of waiting, and that is completely valid. The decision of when to claim Social Security is deeply personal and depends on your health, your other income sources, your spouse's situation, and a dozen other factors. But here is why I bring up delayed retirement credits in this specific video. Some people who were born before 1955 and who are already collecting benefits may have claimed early without fully understanding what they were giving up long term. And while you cannot go back and undo a claiming decision in most cases, knowing this information can help you make smarter decisions about other assets, whether to draw down savings more slowly, whether to defer a pension, or whether a spouse in your household should consider waiting to maximize their own benefit. And wait until you hear this one because it trips up even the most financially savvy retirees. I am talking about the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, two rules that have historically reduced Social Security benefits for certain public sector workers, including some teachers, firefighters, police officers, and government employees. These rules affected people who received a pension from a job not covered by Social Security while also having some Social Security work history. For years, these provisions quietly reduced benefits for millions of workers who felt the cuts were deeply unfair. And here is the update that matters right now in 2026. Congress passed the Social Security Fairness Act in late 2024, which eliminated both the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. That law took effect in 2025, and the Social Security Administration has been working through a large backlog of cases to recalculate and adjust benefits for those who were affected. If you or your spouse worked in a government job, in education, or in another public sector role, and you were subject to either of those provisions, your benefit may have already been adjusted upward. But if you have not received any notice and you believe you were affected, you need to contact the SSA directly and ask them to review your case. Some people affected by this change are also eligible for lump sum back payments covering the period since the law went into effect. Let me bring John back for a second, because his story actually connects here too. As it turns out, John's wife worked as a public school teacher for over 20 years, in a state where teachers are covered by a separate pension system and not Social Security. Because of the old government pension offset rules, her spousal benefit based on John's record had been reduced. After the Social Security Fairness Act took effect, she received notice that her monthly benefit was going up and that she would receive a back payment for the months since the law changed. John and his wife were both shocked. They had no idea legislation had passed that affected them until they received a letter in the mail, and not everyone in their situation received that letter proactively. If you think this might apply to you, do not wait for the SSA to reach out. Be the one who calls them. Here's another area that I see cause real confusion, and it is one that is particularly relevant for people born before 1955 who may have had gaps in their earnings history. Social Security calculates your benefit using your highest 35 years of earnings. If you worked fewer than 35 years, the SSA fills in zeros for the missing years, which drags your average down and lowers your benefit. Now, here is something a lot of people do not consider. If you are still working even part-time, those earnings are still going into your record. And if your current earnings are higher than one of your lower earning years from decades past, the SSA can substitute the new year in the calculation and increase your benefit. This means that even if you are already collecting Social Security, working even a modest part-time job could trigger an automatic upward adjustment in your monthly payment. The SSA reviews earnings records every year and updates benefits accordingly. You do not have to do anything special. The adjustment should happen automatically, but it is worth verifying that it actually did. I want to revisit Linda for a moment because there is one more piece of her story that I think is incredibly important. After Linda discovered the survivor benefit she had been missing, she also sat down and had her entire earnings record reviewed. She found 2 years from the late 1980s where her wages were significantly underreported. She had changed jobs twice in a short period, and her records from one employer had apparently never been forwarded correctly to the Social Security Administration. Correcting those 2 years, combined with switching to the survivor benefit, ended up increasing Linda's monthly income by more than $400. She did not need a lawyer. She did not pay anyone a fee. She simply called the SSA, asked the right questions, and was persistent about getting a full review of her record. That is a word I want you to hold on to. Persistent. The Social Security Administration is a massive federal agency handling hundreds of millions of accounts. Mistakes happen, and the system does not always catch them automatically. Being your own advocate, asking questions, requesting reviews, and following up when you do not hear back is sometimes the difference between getting what you are owed and leaving money behind permanently. Now, here is where it gets really interesting, and I saved this point because I think it is one of the most actionable things I can share with you today. The SSA has a process called a benefit verification review, and it allows you to request that a claims specialist manually review your benefit calculation. This is different from just looking at your online statement. A human being actually goes through your file, checks the math, confirms your eligibility for any provisions you may have missed, and verifies that the correct formulas were applied based on your age and work history. Not everyone knows this service exists, and not everyone asks for it. But for someone born before 1955 who has been collecting benefits for several years without ever having a professional review done, this one phone call could uncover an error worth thousands of dollars. And that brings me to the mistake that surprises people the most, which is simply not asking. People assume that if something is wrong with their Social Security benefit, the government would have told them. But that is not always how it works. The SSA processes millions of claims every year, and errors that do not trigger an automatic flag can sit undetected for years. Nobody is going to knock on your door and say, "Hey, you have been underpaid and we owe you money." That conversation starts with you. Let me give you a simple checklist of the things we have covered today, presented as a set of actions you can take this week. First, log into your account at ssa.gov and review your complete earnings history year by year. Look for any years that seem too low or missing entirely. Second, if you are a widow or widower, contact the SSA and specifically ask about your eligibility for survivor benefits based on your late spouse's record. Do not assume you are already receiving the maximum you are entitled to. Third, if you are married and your own work record produced a lower benefit than 50% of your spouse's record, ask the SSA whether you qualify for a spousal benefit adjustment. Fourth, if you or your spouse ever worked in a government job with a pension not covered by Social Security, ask the SSA how the Social Security Fairness Act of 2024 may apply to your situation and whether you are owed back pay. Fifth, if you have fewer than 35 years of earnings on record, consider whether any current or recent part-time work is being captured and whether it could trigger an upward recalculation of your benefit. Sixth, call the SSA and request a benefit verification review. Ask them to manually confirm that your benefit was calculated correctly based on your full eligibility. I know that list might sound like a lot, but here is the honest truth. You do not have to do everything at once. Pick one item this week, make one phone call, spend 10 minutes on the SSA website. Every step you take is one step closer to knowing with confidence whether you are receiving everything you earned. And if there is an error, the sooner you find it, the sooner you get it corrected, and the sooner your check reflects the right number. I want to come back to Bob one final time because I think his takeaway is the most universal of all three. Bob is not a financial expert. He does not have a degree in accounting. He is just a regular guy who spent his career working hard and expected that the system would take care of things correctly on the other end. He was not completely wrong to think that, but he learned the hard way that trust does not replace verification. When Bob helped his wife, Carol, get her spousal benefit sorted out, he also went back and reviewed his own record for the first time in years. He found a discrepancy from a construction job he held in the late 1970s, where the employer had apparently reported his wages under a slightly different version of his name and social security number. It had sat there uncorrected for decades. After filing a correction request and supporting it with old tax documents he had kept in a box in the basement, Bob's own benefit was recalculated upward. Not by a huge amount, but by enough to matter. Every extra dollar counts when you are living on a fixed income in retirement. Here is the deeper message I want to leave you with. Social Security is not just a government check. It is a reflection of every year you worked, every dollar you contributed, and every sacrifice you made to build a life for yourself and your family. You earned that benefit. You paid into that system for decades, and you deserve to receive every single dollar of it correctly calculated every single month. The system is not perfect, and the responsibility for catching errors ultimately falls on you. But the good news is that the tools are there, the process exists, and the people at the Social Security Administration can help when you reach out with specific informed questions. If this video helped you today, I have a small favor to ask. Think of one person in your life, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a neighbor, someone born before 1955 who might be in this exact situation and has no idea. Share this video with them. Not because it is a nice thing to do, though it is, but because the information in here could genuinely change their financial picture. That is the whole reason this channel exists, and I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Which part of this video surprised you the most? Was it the survivor benefit rules, the government pension offset repeal, the earnings record errors? Or maybe you have your own story about finding a mistake in your Social Security record or helping a family member navigate the system. Share it below. Those real-life stories help other viewers in this community more than you know. Please remember this video is for educational purposes only. For your personal situation, always consult a licensed financial advisor or contact Social Security directly at ssa.gov.